Robert Greene once wrote that seduction is never about beauty. It is about entering someone's psychology before they even realize the game has begun. Most people think seduction starts with attraction, a smile, chemistry, eye contact, timing. That's the version people sell you. But real seduction? Real seduction is far darker than that. It begins long before the first conversation, long before the first compliment, long before the first, "I've never met anyone like you." Because they didn't fall for your personality, they fell for your wound. And the most disturbing part? They spotted it before you even said a word. They noticed the way you needed reassurance, the way silence made you anxious, the way you over-explained, the way being chosen mattered a little too much. And from that moment, the game had already started. Because seduction, real seduction, is not romance. It is a targeting system. And the person who ran it on you didn't get lucky. They were looking for something specific, something unfinished, something broken, something you didn't even realize was visible. And what I'm going to show you right now is not just how that system works, it's why it worked on you. And why, even after you saw the manipulation, part of you still didn't want to leave. Because that part, that is the real story. And almost nobody talks about it. Before any seducer walks into your life, the setup is already done. Not by them, by your past. Psychologists call it an attachment wound, and it usually doesn't come from a toxic ex. It comes from your first relationship, the one you had no choice in. A parent who was sometimes warm, and sometimes distant, sometimes loving, and sometimes emotionally unavailable, sometimes present, and sometimes completely checked out. Your nervous system was too young to understand inconsistency, so it adapted. It learned that love is unstable, that affection disappears, that attention must be earned, that being loved means chasing, not receiving, not resting, chasing. And that lesson? It never left. It just went underground. Then one day, someone walks into your adult life carrying that exact same energy. Not safe, not stable, not predictable, just familiar. The girl who texts you all night, then disappears for 3 days. The man who listens better than anyone, until he knows exactly where your weakness lives. The person who makes you feel seen, but never secure. And your brain, without asking your permission, mistakes familiar for love, even when familiar is dangerous. This is why brilliant people get manipulated. This is why people with advanced degrees, high salaries, and strong social lives end up trapped in relationships they can't explain. It has nothing to do with intelligence, because the nervous system does not think, it recognizes. And what it recognizes as love was written into you before you were old enough to question it. The seducer didn't create your vulnerability, they just found the door that was already open. And here's where it gets darker. Because once someone identifies what you're starving for, validation, certainty, excitement, the feeling of being truly chosen, they do not give it to you fully. That would end the game too fast. They give you just enough. Then they disappear. Then they come back. Warm, cold, warm again. And suddenly, you are no longer in a relationship. You are inside a neurological experiment. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, and it is one of the most powerful behavioral mechanisms ever studied. More addictive than consistent reward, more powerful than punishment. Casinos are built on it. Social media algorithms run on it. Slot machines survive because of it. And the person who manipulated you? Whether they knew the psychology term or not, they used it perfectly. And here's the terrifying part. Sometimes, they don't even know they're doing it. Some people manipulate consciously. Others simply repeat the same emotional chaos they grew up inside. But intentional or not, the damage feels the same. Your dopamine system, the same system involved in addiction, stops firing when the reward arrives. It starts firing in anticipation, in uncertainty, in waiting. That's why you stop thinking about them when they're sitting right in front of you and start obsessing the second they leave the room. You replay texts, you analyze pauses, you stare at your phone, you build entire emotional worlds inside 10 minutes of silence. That obsession? That wasn't love. That was conditioning. The same loop behind gambling addiction, the same loop behind drug dependency. And every time they pulled away, they pulled the lever. Now let me tell you something almost nobody in this space says, because it completely destroys the usual story people believe. People love saying the victims of manipulation are weak, naive, desperate, emotionally immature. That is complete nonsense. And honestly, it is one of the most damaging lies in this conversation, because the people most effectively manipulated are often the ones with the highest emotional intelligence, the kindest people, the most empathetic people, the ones who genuinely care. Here's why. Emotional intelligence requires openness. Empathy requires permeability. You have to let people in. You have to feel what they feel. You have to care about their inner world. And that openness, that is exactly what a skilled manipulator targets. Your sensitivity was never your weakness. It was weaponized against you. Meanwhile, the emotionally closed person, the one everyone calls cold, guarded, unavailable, is actually harder to seduce. Not because they are stronger, but because they shut down the emotional highways manipulation travels through. So the cruelest irony is this: the deeper your capacity for genuine love, the more precisely you can be targeted. So stop blaming yourself. You did not fall because you were stupid. You fell because you were open, and there is a difference. Now let me show you the architecture most calculated seductions follow. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. They become your friend first. Not because they value friendship, because friendship builds trust, and trust builds a story. He listens. She understands me. He's different. She gets me. And once that story is established, your brain will fight to protect it. This is called cognitive dissonance. The mind hates holding two contradictory truths about the same person. So when their behavior starts to shift, when the warmth becomes conditional, when the affection starts feeling strategic, when the kindness starts carrying a price, your mind does not update the story. It defends it. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe they're just stressed. They've been so good to me. That defense, that is the trap. Because now you are not attached to a person. You are attached to the version of them you created inside your own mind. And that imagined version is often far more powerful than the real one standing in front of you. Letting go no longer feels like ending a relationship. It feels like killing hope. It feels like dismantling a future. It feels like grieving someone who technically never existed. That is why it hurts in a way that feels irrational. Because the grief is not just about them. It is about the story, the fantasy, the future you built, and how badly you wanted it to be true. Then, right when you finally start pulling away, they escalate. More warmth, more attention, more vulnerability, more of exactly what hooked you in the first place, because they can feel the distance growing, and the machine goes into overdrive. Suddenly, they miss you. Suddenly, they care. Suddenly, they say everything you waited months to hear, and a part of you responds. Of course it does. Not because you are weak, not because you are foolish, but because your nervous system has been trained for months to chase that signal. Pavlov did not just work on dogs. And breaking free from this? It is not about willpower. That is the mistake people make. Willpower is the wrong tool, because you are not fighting a person, you are fighting a pattern, a loop, a chemical association between pain and reward. Freedom begins with pattern recognition, seeing clearly enough to separate love from conditioning, connection from addiction, intimacy from emotional gambling. And that rewiring takes time. It takes distance, it takes silence, and most painfully, it often feels worse before it gets better. Because dopamine withdrawal is real, and emotionally, it feels exactly like grief. But listen carefully, you are not grieving the person. You are grieving who you were inside the fantasy. The version of you that felt chosen, wanted, special, finally understood. That is the real loss, and it deserves to be named. You now know something most people spend years learning the hard way. The wound that made you reachable, the loop that made you addicted, the friendship that made you trust, and the love bombing that made leaving feel impossible. But before you move on, I want to leave you with one question, and I do not want you to answer it quickly. If seduction depends on finding the emotional gap, the thing you are not getting enough of, what does that reveal about the relationships you are in right now? Not the ones that ended, the ones still happening. Because manipulation does not always look like a villain. Sometimes it looks patient. Sometimes it looks kind. Sometimes it looks like the one person who finally understands you. And sometimes the most dangerous seducer is not the one who lies to you. It is the one who makes you lie to yourself. That everything is fine. That the red flags are misunderstandings. That your anxiety is love. That your obsession is chemistry. That your pain means passion. No. Sometimes pain is just pain. And sometimes the most dangerous place you can be is not trapped in your past, but standing in your present, with your eyes only half open.